He's Dave, and I'm Dallas, and we have opinions on just about everything. Sometimes they're on point, and sometimes they go down better with a glass of wine. Join us. This is the Wine and Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to Wine and, the show where we pair wine with movies, TV, music, books, comics, and maybe one day we'll pair it with, I don't know, weather reports. You know, is it sunny, cloudy? Is it rainy, windy, gale force winds, flash floods, record heat waves, which is what's going on in the country right now as we record this, whatever the weather, however you feel about the weather, there is a wine that pairs with that. And don't be looking, at your phone or desktop or the little app on your home screen or lock screen. Obviously, nothing pairs with spot checking the weather. No, you need to find an actual weather report. I did say weather reports is what we're going to pair wines with. So find someone who's actually bothering to be performative about it, giving you the weather bright-eyed and bushy-tailed first thing in the ungodly wee hours of the morning. But Dave, you might say, if I'm watching a weather report like on a network station or a weather person delivering it to me, that means I'm watching it first thing in the morning. Those exact hours you just called ungodly and wee. Should I really be drinking wine at such hours? Yes. Today, folks, it is my birthday. So the deal with Dallas was he was going to sing me happy birthday on the podcast. That was the deal because he's making me record on my birthday. So Dallas, take it away.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Frankie Dave Baxter. I just gave away your whole name. Happy birthday to you. All right, well, we're going to autocorrect that after the fact, but yeah, happy birthday, old man.
Thank you. I am young. I am so young, as we like to say on the show, me and Dallas both. We are so young. We are still in our late 20s, early 30s, depending on when you ask us and how honest we're being. Neither is the honest answer, but it's how honest we're being, how far away from the actual truth we are. If you're actually young, you never have to claim you're young. So we are claiming that we are young. Let's put it that way.
Forever.
All right. So it is my birthday today, and it is the day before Independence Day. So now you know my birthday, right? And that's going to be important because we are here today to talk about a film that hasn't yet been released here in the States, only over in its home country, the UK. So take a look for this movie. I'm going to name it in just a minute. But first off, special shout out to Blake of Blake's Buzz, another podcast and YouTube show you should absolutely check out if you love interviews with creators, because Blake is one of the most passionate and frankly insightful of all the interviewers out there right now. Says me. Blake sent us this movie screener in advance, and we heartily thank him for it. We are talking about and before I actually get to the movie, Blake's Buzz, I'm going to put a link down below in the description to his YouTube channel so you can go check it out. He predominantly interviews comic book creators. We came from our legacy show from the comic book world, so we knew Blake very well. But he is also really spearheading and running the Geek Network website, which covers everything these days. It covers video games, it covers music, it covers movies, it covers comics, it covers all that stuff. So his show is expanding there as well, just like our show expanded from comics to include all these things. So go take a look at Blake's Buzz, link down below in the description of this episode. But today, what movie are we talking about? We are here to talk about Chris Cronin's feature film debut, the horror movie, The Moor.
Oh, yeah.
And that is the Moor, like the landscape of a moor, not like Othello is the Moor. Right. So I've always wondered about that etymology between the two. Like why one is a foggy, boggy, marshland, plain, like hilly. I'm not even sure what the definition of a moor is, to be honest, because I don't live in the UK. I've never really bothered to look into this.
I think it's.
Exactly?
I think the root is the morass or the swamp. I'm pretty sure it's morass.
Swampland. Okay, it is like swampland, like bogland type of a thing. Okay, cool. So like Florida is our moor, right? Kind of a thing.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I feel like there has to. I feel like it's hillier.
The peat bogs, the moors. Yeah.
No, there you go. So we are here to talk about Chris Cronin's feature film debut, The Moor. A little backstory here. The film had its world premiere in the First Blood strand of FrightFest in 2023, a platform dedicated to debut feature films. It quickly gained recognition as one of the standout entries in its category. Total Film honored the film with FrightFest's Best Scare Award and nominated director Cronin for Best Director.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Chris Cronin did direct many short films leading up to this, but this is his first feature film. The British folk horror film is based on true stories about murders in the countryside. Sophia La Porta stars as Claire, who is approached by the father of her murdered childhood friend to help investigate the haunted moor he believes is his son's final resting place. Cronin is on record as saying, quote, "My aim with this story was to create an original horror film set in my home country of Yorkshire.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of delving into the fictional murders themselves, I focused on the aftermath and how something so terrible affects lives and relationships. What happens when so much grief and guilt are left unresolved?" The cast includes David Edward Robertson, Elizabeth Dormer Phillips, Mark Peachy, Vicky Hackett, and Bernard Hill, one of his very last roles before passing away this past May. Bernard Hill, for those who are unaware, Bernard has been acting since 1975, going all the way back to the movie Gandhi. And he was, for Americans, we would probably know him best as he was the captain on James Cameron's Titanic.
That's right.
And King Theoden in the Lord of the Rings series, a trilogy of films by Peter Jackson, amongst so many other roles of note. And this is one of his final roles. And he is fantastic as the police captain here. Or a retired police captain. I'm going to say the word captain. I don't know if he was actually a police captain per se, but a police high-ranking policeman.
He was an authority. He was an authority of some sort.
Yes. So a little bit of housekeeping before we keep talking about the film. If you like what you hear today, of course, please make sure to hit that follow or subscribe button. It does help the podcast grow and reach new listeners. If you love us, please leave that 5-star review. And if you don't love us, well, fuck you too. No, really. Send us, if you don't love us, tell us why. Send us a message. Email us. You can email us at wine, the letter N for Nancy, pod, winenpod@gmail.com. Tell us why we suck or how you think we can improve. We will take that feedback seriously, even if it's all negative and barely constructive. Honestly, we'll take it seriously.
Yeah.
So send us that message and let us know what you think. If you think there are improvements we can make on the show and you do want to be constructive, even better. You can also interact with us over on our Substack, wineand.substack.com, where you can also find uncut, lengthier versions of many of these episodes, along with articles on the intersection between entertainment and wine, interactive polls, bonus pairings, and more, including, it's coming very, very soon. Within the next week or two, I will finally start making them now that we have enough episodes under our belt. We will have directories of all the pairings, all the different things we've had split up by, there'll be a page for all the movies, page for all the albums, page for all the books, so on and so forth, all the comics, and all the pairings will live historically on that page. You can find links to all the wines that we pair with each individual thing, listed alphabetically by category. So you can find that all on our Substack. We even just this week got a wonderful little shout out by a Substack, Fermentation, written by Tom Wark, Wark.
Yeah.
Tom Wark is one of the OG PR guys in the wine world, and he did a article this week about the continuing evolution of the wine media and shouted out 16 the people and periodicals and podcasts and whatnot to follow that are all sort of the new blood of the wine media. And he named us. He put us on that list of 16, and 16 is not a terribly exhaustive list. That's a fairly curated one. So I was very proud to be on that list. Yeah, so go check that out and go check out Tom Wark. I'm gonna put a link to his Substack down below as well as a quid pro quo. Thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate it hugely. And check out that Substack, once again, wineand.substack.com. That's the best place to find us. You can also send us a text. There's a little clickable link down in the description of this episode that says send us a text. If you're on your phone or mobile device that has texting functions, go ahead and click that link. It opens up your text app, and you can send us a message directly via that. It just comes into our Buzzsprout inbox. Doesn't show us your phone number, never fear. Just sends us a quick and easy message. You can send it that way as well. Okay, To start us off, The Moor is, as already mentioned, directed by Chris Cronin, who had done numerous shorts before this. But The Moor is his feature debut. The cinematographer of this film is Chris's brother, Sean Cronin. It is written by Paul Thomas and produced by Chris Cronin, Paul Thomas, and I'm going to screw up this name, but Pavel Praz, or Prats, or Prazes, or I'm not sure. Pracz. So good luck with that. If you think I'm terrible at this, which I am terrible at this. But Chris Cronin, Paul Thomas, and Pavel Praz. It opens in the 1960s in northern England, where a young Claire convinces her childhood friend Danny to distract a shopkeeper so she can shoplift some sweets for the two of them. The opening credits. So in this scene alone, and we're going to start here with our discussion because I love this opening scene. I think this opening scene it's very different than the rest of the film. And in interviews with the director, he basically said they shot this last. Yeah. So they shot the whole rest of the film. They had even edited the entire film before shooting this opening sequence. Now, it was always the plan to go shoot this opening sequence. It was just when it was more summertime and the weather was different and they had their kid cast. Like, this just happened at another time. So they shot it, and this is probably, and this is no shade on the rest of the film, because this is quite a stellar horror debut, all told, but this is my favorite part of the film. I was so impressed by this opening. It does so many cool little things that this opens, it's on a street, it's in maybe a single take. Maybe it's a fake single take, I'm not sure.
It's a fudge. It's definitely a fudge single take, maybe.
A fudge single take. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a fudge single take, yeah. But they do it in a way where it's like a single take. That the camera does not cut away. You are following these kids as they hatch this plan to shoplift some candy, or as the British like to call them, sweets. I will never I kind of hate that word. I don't know why, but I'm always like, sweets. I'm like, I don't know. I like candy. Candy's my word. But we'll go with sweets. It's a UK film, fine, and they call it sweets. Yeah. But she tells Danny, and I thought they were brother sister, but no, this is her childhood friend, right. And I think she's a little older than him, right. So a little more authoritative, right? And so she's like, here's the plan. You go in and you say you're looking for your dad. And and then that way we'll distract the shopkeeper. And afterwards, don't worry, just say like, oh, never mind, and just walk out. So he goes to distract the shopkeeper. They're on the street. He goes in, she waits on the street, and they're in this like sort of alleyway where you keep seeing the background of this alleyway, which is enshrouded in darkness. Right. And there's kind of a suggestion there's something back there. Mm-hmm. And I love this because is there or isn't there? And you're never 100% sure. And it just sort of keeps you in suspense there. Then she leaves that. She gives Danny a minute, then goes inside. When she enters, he's talking to the shopkeeper. And she goes over, and you can hear the conversation between Danny and the shopkeeper in the distance. She's palming all the candies, like getting it in her pockets and whatnot, putting it in a bag, and then when she thinks it's time to go, she's like, okay, here we go, goes back to the main door, stumbles over something, bumps into something. The shopkeeper and Danny both pause and look at her, and it's like just this moment of like frozen terror of possibly getting caught, right? And then she freaks out and she runs out the front door, and when she runs out the front door, for this flash of a second, you see this faceless adult man just standing there, and you don't see his head. It's like neck. It's like the opposite of Head and Shoulders, right? It's the neck down that you see, and you don't see the face. And it's so brief, and in this way that she like kind of reacts that he's there, also kind of doesn't, and just like runs away and goes back to the alleyway. And you're like, wait, was there just some guy standing there? Why? That was weird. And then she looks back to the main entrance. That guy's not there. And Danny never emerges. He never comes out. She waits there for a couple minutes. We keep seeing the alleyway, and like something's going to emerge from the alleyway, and we're not sure if that's going to happen. She finally goes back into the shop, goes to the shopkeeper, and is like, where's the boy who was looking for his dad? And the guy was like, oh, yeah, no worries. His dad came and picked him up. And that's where we end the opening.
Yeah, so... just cinematically speaking, what this first sequence does is a couple of things, and I do think there's some references that these guys have in this film that
I'm sure
that are
all modern filmmakers do. All modern filmmakers
are sort of overt. I will say the whole first sequence reminds me of the establishing sequences of Fritz Lang's work, particularly M. If you guys don't know Fritz Lang's M, it's one of my absolute favorite films of all time. It's fantastic. It's disturbing. Peter Lorre. It's just fantastic.
And M stands for murderer, murderer, or murder. Yeah. So it's just called M.
Just a great film. But there is that long sort of tracking shot in the beginning. So first they've got two kids, right? We know there's danger. Mm-hmm. We know there's danger afoot when you've got two kids and a dark alley.
And we know it's a horror movie.
And we know it's a horror movie, but you got a dark alley. There's they do a great job with the lighting and the detail in the rear of the alley because in the sort of foreground, in the background, there is what seems to be light coming from a doorway or something, and it's sort of encased by this sort of hall of darkness. So they do a great job of pulling focus over her shoulder when she comes back out. And it does a great job of giving you that kind of heebie-jeebie, that kind of weird, unsettling thing. They also do some auditory things that are really interesting with the bell. In a lot of these old shops, particularly in rural towns in the UK, they have actual bells on the door, and when she enters, we hear the bell ring.
Right.
And every time, they drop that seed in the back of your mind. So every time you hear the bell, you make the connection, and that comes back later on as well. But this first sequence does the heavy lifting for this film. We understand that this little kid would not be in this scenario, this situation, without her. By the time we go black on this first sequence, we already know. Yeah, we already know that the guilt is already on her shoulders. And so we move in after that to fast forwarding 25 years, I believe. Yeah, 25 years. Our character is sort of just not in the doldrums, but she is definitely dealing with a lull in her life, which has a lot to do with the fallout over the past few decades from this kid missing. So that's where we pick up after the first scene. I will say to the guys, to Chris Cronin, is that that's the name?
Yes.
Chris Cronin. And the writers here, that first sequence, I want to say it's probably going to be some of the best work you're ever going to do.
Come on now.
I'm just saying, I know they're going to grow. I know they're going to evolve. They're going to be amazing. They've already done amazing things. But I will say, for a first strike, it's kind of a masterful.
Well, take it as a challenge, guys. The Cronins out there, Chris and
impress
Sean,
me, goddammit.
Exactly. It's like, that's a gauntlet thrown. Like, do better than this opening. We dare you, because it's so fucking good.
It's good.
Now, they did say in an interview with Chris Cronin, so it says that opening sequence, it's set in the summer. It's got a child cast. It's one location, a different type of shooting style, so I didn't need as much crew. And we just treated it as a short film.
Yes.
Beginning, middle, and end.
Perfect.
So it's great that it paid off. Exactly. I feel like it informs the film quite a lot. That immediacy that opening creates, it's not just a memory. You get to live it for a minute.
Right.
Unquote.
Right. And let that be a lesson to any filmmakers out there. If you have these sort of establishing sequences, don't just treat them as sort of benchmarks that you need to cross off. Maybe treat them as actual narratives that have a beginning, a middle, and an end, that have their own energy, it's not just and inertia, their own background. Everything needs to be informed. And when you do that, you get these little sequences that do and technically can stand alone as a short film. Because I tell you right now, had they entered this in a short film competition, it would have done amazingly well.
Yes. this like, because even the plot of this story, like, it's so like, oh yeah, his dad came and picked him up and just leaving it dangling there. That is such a short story in a horror anthology.
Absolutely.
Like a prose short story where you just end on that terror of like, and Danny will never be seen again, right? Because of this thing. And you mentioned the bell, and I forgot to mention this too. One of the brilliant things, so that bell, when people come in and out of the door, when Claire, who's the name of the girl, when she comes out of the store and she runs to, and when she bumps into the adult man that's just standing there outside the door, right? And then runs away. And we see him for such a quick, the way this is filmed is so, and edited, is so interesting because it is almost like a blink and you miss it that guy's standing there.
Intentionally,
which I really appreciated. And then she runs back to the alleyway and we follow her. We don't follow the guy.
Right.
She runs back to the alleyway. And while she's in there, like catching her breath and deciding what to do, we do hear the bell again.
Yeah.
Because he's leaving with Danny. Right. And we don't know. So she hears the bell and she's nervous at first. She's like, oh shit, is that the shopkeeper coming out? And she gives it a second and then turns to look around the corner and there's nobody there because they've left. Right. No, we don't know that yet. Then she plucks up the courage, goes inside, and that's when the shopkeeper says, no, Danny, like his dad came and took him.
And I love what they do with the with that character, the shopkeeper, who looks at her and says, oh, no worries. His dad, he left with his dad. He left with his dad. Whatever the quote is. What's amazing is the casting on that shopkeeper, because he's a dark figure. He has dark features. He's got this curious, like almost sinister kind of disposition in his face. And so it's a final kind of like punctuation on that moment. And I'm telling you, I would still enter this into some short story competitions on its own. Because guys, you did some great work there if you're listening.
I think, I think they've done enough. Like this guy has done like at least half a dozen short films.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch his canon here.
Shorts, But I think at this point he's like, I've done shorts. I'm good. I just want to do a feature, man. Like I don't need the advice of doing yet another short. Thanks anyway. But shout out to that opening. But keep doing them anyway. Or keep doing them and inserting them into your features, right? Like this, where it's like you find a perfect way to meld into it. So the way the story goes from here is the opening. So once Danny becomes missing and we end on Claire realizing what's just happened, the opening credits then show us a montage of missing children across the area. A man who is eventually, and this is all in like this montage where the opening credits play of like newspaper article clippings and, things of that shtick, where then a man who was arrested for them eventually, but most of the bodies remain missing, lost in the vast expanse of the moor and that area. And the culprit isn't bothering to show the authorities where they are. So from there, we enter the present day where there's a lot of unfinished emotional business with these murders because the bodies have not been found. Even though they're pretty sure they know who did it, he's confessed to at least some of them. These murders are loosely based on the quote-unquote Moor Murders of the 60s, which were actually carried out by a couple, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, over the course of a few years.
There's some great docs out there, by the way, guys, that have chronicled that and the updates subsequently over the decades. It's a terrifying story. And also, in terms of the opening credits to this film, it is kind of done in that cinema verite, we'll go with cinema verite kind of style, where it is that sort of realistic docu style. And it definitely sort of does give you kind of the inertia and momentum of what it would feel like living 25 years later in a town where these murders kind of happen. So,
Right. And going back to, the director has basically stated a little bit about how, back in the 60s, because it was the 60s that this was happening, and when the Moor Murders actually happened as well. And just what a different time period it was, where it's like, yeah, because even when the director was growing up in the 90s, he's like, it was just a different time. Like, your parents would just send you out to go.
Yeah.
If you wanted candy, they'd be like, yeah, just go get candy.
Yeah.
Come back in a few hours. Like, no one gave a shit. And we all grew up that way, or most of us. And like I said, we were old. We're old, as we mentioned.
I thought we were young 5 minutes ago.
That's right. We're quote unquote young, is what I meant to say. We're totally young, and we totally grew up in a world where, yes, your parents were like, fuck off, leave us alone for a few hours, and you just went and did anything. And the director basically said, looking back on his childhood, it's like, it was so easy to just take a kid.
Yeah.
Like, there was no one stopping you. And even the town, even if they knew you, like, this was a small Northern England town, but even the shopkeeper didn't know who Danny's father was. Right. He was like, because when this other stranger came, he's like, oh, yeah, his dad showed up and took him, probably because they went to a shop where they're like, they don't know who we are. Right. Like, that's why we're trying to shoplift from it. Right. So you find that one that's like the one you don't go to personally as kids. So they don't know which people in the village might be your parents. You could be from out of town. They don't know. But anyway, it was a very different time. And so the movie picks up in the 90s. Which is when our main story takes place in the quote unquote present, but is actually the 90s. So no cell phones, right? It's still a different time period in that regard. They're trying to, so in the present day, Claire, as an adult, has befriended Danny's father, Bill. And Bill is hellbent on finding Danny's body still. He has enlisted
he's consumed, and rightfully so. He is obsessed and consumed with answering the question. Right. Yeah.
I mean, you say rightfully so. This is something like, I do understand it, because it's, again, that unfinished emotional quality to it. But there's a part of me that this is where it's like the body isn't important anymore. Like, it's just, if you really think he's out there alive, that's one thing. But if you do not suspect they're out there alive, the body just isn't necessary.
Well,
it's like,
I think I get what you're saying. But when it enters the territory of like a parental connection, right? There is, and you got to deal with sort of cultural kind of connectivity too, right? There are cultures where the body laying it to rest does not punctuate the sort of, the statement, the grander statement of that person.
I know. I'm going to argue that culture's got to get over that shit, though, because it's not healthy. It's not healthy.
That's not going anywhere.
Oh, I know it's
not going anywhere.
I'm still going to argue that is, whether or not it is specifically a religious custom in any given culture, like there is that element of faith and religiosity to it,
of course,
which is pure, like, superstition, where it's like you have to lay the body to rest in this specific way with these specific things. And it's like, and is 90% of the rest of the world really doing it wrong? And all these bodies are not being laid to rest correctly? Like, come on, guys, come on.
Yeah.
Like, at some point we all have to just accept that, like, what happens to the body after death is not that particularly important. I feel like it causes so much of the emotional damage is that getting hung up on the concept of laying the body to rest. So anyway, it's my argument. I totally get it. I know it's a thing. I'm just going to argue that it's a bad thing. And we're all going to be the better for getting over that shit.
What do you want us to do, Dave? Just leave the bodies out on the street and walk by them all day? Come on.
No, I mean, that's decay. That's
there are cultures that do that and have been doing it for thousands of years. They actively lay the bodies out and allow the vultures to clean them over the course of months,
right?
Which is entertaining is the wrong word.
If you are a small enough population, that works. But you have to be a small, again, public health crisis if you're a big enough population,
right? With
like hundreds of deaths a day.
Exactly.
It's like, well, that ain't happening. Right.
That would be a stinky time. Anyway, death aside, he is consumed and obsessed with finding some sort of punctuation to his own torment, and I don't because it isn't rational. And the father's name is Ron. Bill. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, Bill. And shout out to this actor too, because he was. I mentioned him once. Let me go find his name real quick again. It is David Edward Robertson. So David Edward Robertson starred in one of Chris Cronin's short films many years before. And by the time they were casting this film, Chris realized that David would actually have the years on him now to play Bill, and so they brought him into audition because he's not like a big name, but he is, and apparently Sophia La Porta, who played Claire, and then David Edward, who plays Bill, they had very different acting methodologies. Like David Edward Robertson was a very method actor. Like he's one of those guys who would go to sleep.
He lives in the role.
Like still in character.
Yeah.
Right. And would wake up still in that headspace. And Sophia was a kind of actress that could turn it on and off.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, and cameras, like, and action and turn it on, and cut and turn it off, and be able to keep going. And so I think there's no stories of like that they rubbed each other the wrong way because of that or anything like that, but just like the different acting methodologies and how people get into those headspaces. But I will say, you watch David Edward Robertson in the role of Bill, and he is one of the most ponderous presences I've seen in film in a long time. Like he is a lump of grief and sadness.
It's also
and rage.
It's not. I wouldn't say rage. It's a subdued, boiling, simmering, omnipresent. It's a dissonance. Nothing is settled in this person's spirit, and he does such a great job of communicating that even through the silent moments when he's just looking at other characters in the scene. He does, and you're right, ponderous is a great word, because you can tell that everything about him is unsettled and constantly considering and thinking. And there are some moments of where the rage definitely does show.
Well, I'm gonna hold on. Let me. I did ponderous rage. Rage was finishing ponderous.
Oh, okay.
So it's the idea. So the rage is. I mean, believe me, I'm gonna say that rage is there every second of the film. It's not erupting,
right?
But it is like it's. And I think you're not even sure how much it's there because he plays it so.
Right.
He's a little distant from all the other characters. Sometimes he can connect to them, but it's almost, as the movie goes on, the cool part about this character and the way it's played and the way it's written is you start to realize that he's only connecting to other people as long as he's getting what he needs.
Right. And what he needs is information. Yes. What he needs is the connection to everyone else.
And the moment someone stops giving him what he needs or starts to question, maybe we don't need this, that's where you start to realize it's actually rage. Right. There's something else going on here in him. So, and whereas Claire is just, she wants finality, but she's even a little torn on how much she needs it. Right. And I think she wants it, but she's not sure how. Like she's not. How far does she need to go?
Right. She wants to flee she wants to flee the situation in general, which is why she sort of fled her apartment. Which is why she just wants distance. Which is and she's been wanting distance from the beginning. And she makes a statement later on that when things got really hairy at the beginning, her family left town, and she's been essentially doing that ever since. And you're right with Bill's character. His connection to everyone in this world is his son, is some attempt at connecting the dots that all, move back to his son. And when, like you said, when he doesn't get some bit of satisfaction to some curiosity, that rage comes out, or some other emotion that redirects. And it is a very well written, and I would say probably even better acted, because he does such a wonderful job of that understated
It's intense while
intensity.
It's intense while you're not sure exactly how to decipher it. Right. You have to watch the movie to really see where it goes and where he eventually ends up. And just to make people aware, because we haven't really said what the meat of this movie actually is. And the meat of this movie is actually exploring the Moor itself. And Bill hires a diviner, just like a water diviner, but they can do like a soul or body divination where it's like, give us, an article that it was personal to the soul or person you're trying to find. They can divine up to a point on the map. And we first meet this older guy And when I say older, like I don't know, 30s, type of a thing, like, or maybe 40s, but he's not that old,
Right.
middle-aged, adult. And then we meet his daughter, who's an even more powerful diviner than he is. And it's like a father-daughter team that is interestingly a sort of flip between Sophia and Bill, who aren't father-daughter. But in that one, of course, the younger woman is the more reasonable, more, okay, but there's a limit. Let's not go past X point,
Right.
Of what we're doing here. Whereas Bill is just like, no, anything, everything. This is all I actually give a shit about. And he keeps playing his hand when they're on the moor, and he'll abandon people at the drop of a hat if he thinks like he sees signs that like there's something that he needs to see or might be where his son is. Like, I mean, he just like outright, he does not give a shit about you, and he proves that over and over again.
Right.
Even though when all is said and done, he comes back and he seems kind of reasonable again. But the father-daughter diviner team, the daughter is the intense one, who's like all about, because of how much she feels, how much power she has in her divination, versus the father, who's because of how powerful his daughter's gift is, and apparently things have gone a little too far and a little wrong in the past that way. He's very like, okay, but we're not going this far because I need to protect her. I need to protect how far deep she gets into this and how close to these horrible events and probably these suffering souls that she's diving into. So you get this nice little flip between the two pairs of people. And then there is a scout, this lady who like knows the moors like the back of her hand and knows how to navigate them. And she's leading the whole team through this. So the majority of the movie, it takes place on the moors. And the director basically said that when it came to shooting on the moors, everything you see is the natural weather of the moors at the time of filming.
Phenomenal.
It is phenomenal.
The other starring character in this film. It is by far top billing in this film.
You would think, you would think they had to CGI this fog into the thing, or like, it was a soundstage, really.
And maybe they punched it up a bit, but you can tell that most of this is just due to the actual climate in this place.
Right. And here's the quote. He says, in an interview, he says, "Oh man, you just rely on the natural weather of the north, don't you? That's the thing. If you want a cloudy looking movie, you just do that.
Yeah.
I think when people think of the north, they do think of it as a bit gray and grim, but that area on a good day is actually a beautiful looking place. On a bad day, it looks like a good location for a horror.
Yeah.
So we really just tied it into our schedules. If it was a good day, we had a certain scene we could shoot. We'd shoot interiors, then we'd go out and shoot all the exteriors later. It wasn't about trying to make the north look grim. It was just that the story was grim." So then he also says, quote, "On the moor, it's the air pressure. The weather can change quite rapidly. It actually is a genuine thing. The scenes where we had the heavy mist, we'd be shooting another scene, and 15 minutes in, the mist would come in, and we'd be like, fuck, switch it up. And we'd switch it up and start shooting the misty scene. So it was really just being receptive to the elements. We were not a big budget film, so we couldn't take big lights onto location. So a lot of it was natural lighting outside. Every location was a real environment in the north, so the authenticity that you experienced living or being around there came through, I think. And yes, I agree with that.
And some quick data on the North York Moors itself. Apparently, the region is dated back 12,000 years for archaeological sites and features 700 of them designated as scheduled monuments. They've carbon dated the hell out of this place over the years. Lots of the great history that you've heard about in the sort of Iron Age center around this place. It is a storied place. And more importantly, is some of the mythos and mythology that comes out of this place.
Right.
If you've heard of things like the hobgoblin, the notion of the hobgoblin comes from this region. You've got the roseberry topping, which is sort of a witch's hat. You've got Gormire Lake, this glacial lake that's been referenced in lots of literature over the years. it's
right.
just a storied, creepy place. And I think the creepiest factor of about this place is the idea of the bog. For those of you who don't know, the bog is essentially just sort of a muddy sort of pool of desiccated animal and plant life that can easily take you under. You've heard about Utsi and a lot of the other sort of bog men that have been found over the years, and their bodies have been dated to thousands of years old, because when you're encased in bog, it basically preserves you. And so it's just a storied and creepy and beautiful place.
Yes, there is a archaeological find called the Lindau Man, or Lindau Man, which was found in Peat Marsh as a preserved bog body that was deposited. It was a body that was deposited face down in the bog sometime between 2 BC and 119 AD, and was just preserved by being in the bog all that time. It was found in the 1984, and was considered one of the, quote, one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the 1980s, unquote.
And so imagine if you grew up in this place, let's say 400 or 500, even 100 years ago, a place that has this sort of storied background of finding these perfectly preserved bodies. It would naturally be a creepy place that would develop its own mythos and its own lore, and it would be never mind that the terrain itself is it's 500, almost 600 square miles, and you easily get lost in this place. People just disappeared in this place many times. So good on these guys for allowing this locale, this terrain, to be the kind of anchor of the creep factor in this film. Great job.
Yes. And the one other thing that's in this film, it wouldn't be a proper British horror supernatural film without standing stones of some kind. So there are the 12 apostles. It's based on the actual 12 apostles, or the standing stones of Ilki, that is in this area. They're not the 12 apostles. They kind of make up their own stones. And give it these little designs on the stones that were, I'm pretty sure, made up for the movie. But there are things happening in the moor and in this area that it is a very slow burn movie, but at the same time, there are some wonderfully creeptastic scenes, and then it does culminate. There is a bit of a big ending, but we're no spoilers. This is going to be spoiler free. So go watch the film. It is fantastic. The only other thing I'll mention. Well, not really. Not with where it goes.
Oh, that's
not
true.
Really.
We'll get that. We'll get there. Oh man, yeah. It takes a turn.
Well,
it takes a turn.
We won't get there because we won't get there.
We'll get there. We'll get there, but we won't go there.
Okay, there we go. But go check this out. The Moor. It should be, the last I checked online, it's being released July 7th here in the States on streaming. So go take a look. If that gets pushed, well, it'll still be very soon. So just keep an eye out for it. It's already available in the UK. So go take a look there. And if you're living in the UK, and the one other thing I'll note is our main character, Claire, her character is a failed podcaster. Big feels for you, Claire. Big empathetic feels right there.
It's almost like Blake was saying, knock, knock, guys.
So now she's kind of given up on her podcasting, though she's kind of getting back into it as the story goes. But, we are failed podcasters, but not quite, because we have many years of failure to come. Right. We are committed to our failure. So that failure is going to keep on coming into your wherever you are consuming this podcast. Never fear. But anyways, The Moor by Chris Cronin, his feature film debut. Check it out. Now, wine pairings. What do we pair with a movie like this?
You go first.
Dallas, do you want to kick us off? It's my birthday. It's
your birthday, baby.
First. All right. So, this is a movie. I did struggle a little bit with this one.
I will say, full disclosure, 100%. It was. I went through, I think, 4 different pairings.
Oh yeah. I mean, on the one hand, you could almost. So this movie, it is intense in its way. It's dark in its way. It is slow burn, but still has moments of authentic horror and an ending of authentic extreme horror in its way. It walks a lot of fine lines, which is what makes it difficult, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, yes, it is one thing, but not. Again, I think especially when you're dealing with low budget horror, that can be one of the things is you can't just go all in on certain things because you don't have the budget to do it.
Find creative
you probably
ways
don't
to
have
get
the time.
Yeah.
Right. So you find creative ways to get there and you dance a lot of fine lines that are effective, but then you're like, ooh, but it's not just blankety blank.
Right.
So I can't just go like, yes, it's dark and brooding, but is it as a whole a dark and brooding piece? Because it's also like it has this ethereal quality where, and this very the darkness is there, but the characters are not giving into it, and you're mostly just looking at them walking around real life in a daze and trying to figure out what they want to do about this. And then the supernatural starts entering in, but in very light ways and very deft touches. But then every once in a while, you'll just get the scene where it's like super fucking natural. Like, it's like, now you're in it. Now you're there. And you're like, whoa, I was almost not expecting this film to go there. You know, I found something that probably walked my own fine line on this, which is I did go for a red on this one, but I did not go dark and brooding. I decided against that. But I did go with something that was harsh. I went with something that I'm like, yeah, it's very high acidity. It's very high tannins. So it's got this nice balance of high acidity and like exceptionally high acidity and exceptionally high tannins is one of the biggest mind fucks when you're drinking wine because it is such a tannins dry your mouth out or give you the feeling of your mouth being like chalky and dry and you can't swallow, and acidity makes your mouth water like a motherfucker. So it's like sucking on a lemon wedge while at the same time sucking on something where you can barely swallow past it. So the saliva just keeps coming and coming and coming, but you feel like you can't swallow it because your mouth feels so chalky. So it's just one of those things like, am I dry or am I wet? And you don't know. And at all times you're both. I know this sounds so sexual, but it's not. So I went with this wine. It's a grape that is very well known for its high acidity and high tannins, but it's from a place that is unexpected. This is a Nebbiolo, but it is a Nebbiolo from the extreme northern Lombardy region. It is essentially an Alpine Nebbiolo. So this is I'll show Dallas here a picture because he can see it, but this is the Triaca Casa Legata 2019 Valtellina Superiore. And Valtellina is an area in northern Lombardy that is right on that border between Italy and the Alpines. And it comes through. This is basically, I've got a little bit of a write-up here for it. But this is, it's as Alpine as you can get, a steep sloped valley following a river mere miles from Italy's border with Switzerland. It feels like something out of a musical. Okay, one particular musical, especially if you visit it during the summer. The vineyards are impressive, vertiginous, and terraced. Some are so steep that they can only be reached by funicular. And if modern highways had existed long ago, it's likely that no one would have bothered planting grapes in such a challenging environment. But for centuries, it's been a vital supply of red wines for the Swiss and locals in the northern Lombardy region. If we're thankful that's the case, we are thankful that's the case because Valtellina is home to an expression of Nebbiolo, which they call Chiavennasca. Chiavennasca is the name that they give the grape there, even though that is Nebbiolo because, of course, wine can never be straightforward. So even though you're going to be like, Chiavennasca, I've never had that before. Yes, you have. It's just Nebbiolo, which is what Barolos are. which is what, Nebbiolo Langa, Nebbiolo d'Alba. And this one is going to be probably the closest of those is Nebbiolo Langa, where it's a little bit easier to drink young. But again, that acidity is just unlike the any of the others. It's through the roof. So it stays lighter. It's like even redder and more acidic, more sprightly than normally you'll get with the Nebbiolo, but still has that harshness locked in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so this exact bottle, the 2019 Casa Legata from Triaca, it's harvested from 3 of the most coveted districts in the growing region: Sasella, Grumello, and Inferno.
Mm.
That's a name. It's an ethereal, beautifully aromatic red that combines bright, juicy acidity with a bundle of red fruit highlighted by cranberries and red cherries. Overlay that with the classic Nebbiolo floral tones, hints of truffle and orange zest, and you get a bottle made to charm, but also be ready for those tannins, because man. So I felt like this stayed that lightness, that sort of like arm's reach from the ponderousness of most of the movie, where you're on the outside of these characters. There's a lot going on inside of them, but the movie keeps it kind of this very still, this very emotionally inert almost, where it's just quiet. Like the emotion is so tamped down that you're just like, these poor people. But as the movie goes, it does. We do go places with it. Don't worry. But it's slow burn. So it's got but it's so harsh. Like everything in this movie is harsh. Nothing is nice. Nothing is gentle. Everything feels in ways that are challenging. So I went with this wine because it just had that balance of the ethereal and the sprightly, but then had that harsh element to it. And Triaca, Casa Legata, 2019, Valtellina is the region, Superiore, which is the Chiavennasca or Nebbiolo grape. That's my pairing. Dallas, what you got?
All right. Yeah, I like that. Actually, I could see a Nebbiolo going pretty well with that experience. For those of you who don't know, when it comes to pairings, I'm the guy who I'm either drinking the wine as a character in the world, or as I'm watching this passively in my own home. And for me, it's a character in the world. I just imagine myself, because I do like this sort of cinema verite kind of docudrama style. I get hints of, there are moments when it veers into sort of that found footage territory because of one of the techniques they use with one of the characters. And it's very effective at taking you in and out of the first person. And this is a perfect world to do that in, because this terrain, first of all, it seems so wet, and I hate being wet. It seems so craggy, and I also hate the smell of wet earth. It makes my skin crawl. Particularly like from deciduous forest, old world forest, where there's peat and bog. The smell just makes my skin crawl. I don't know what it is. And so I imagine myself as a character in this world. And I would need something that contrasted the sort of bleakness, the darkness, the heaviness, the sadness, the bitterness that is just kind of ribboning through not only this sort of terrain, but the people, because there is a lot of bitterness that's just moving in and out of these characters. But I also want to sort of complement the petroleum kind of minerality of this world, because it is a very old world. The terrain is very old. And it's sort of it's mineral forward. You can smell the rocky terrain. You can smell the fog and the precipitation, and you can smell the peat on the air, and that kind of petroleum kind of base. So I definitely wasn't going to pick a red. There are a couple of reds I could probably pick that were kind of buoyant and light. But I decided to go with a white. Well, it's technically a white. And the white I chose the grape is known for its presentation, its presenting of the minerality. There's a really acute minerality that generally comes through this particular grape from this particular region. And the region is Alsace, of course. I'm sure Dave knows what it is already. And the Alsace region is in northern France. It is in the shadow of the Vosges Mountains, east of the Rhine. This particular grape and varietal is a sort of wine lover's staple. It often is budget friendly. It pairs well with porks and various meats, fish. It's a pretty versatile wine. And in terms of the notes, you get those earthy notes, which mimic the kind of terrain of this world. You also get there's a really crisp kind of thing that comes through usually. Citrus, green apple, pear. And I liken that to Claire's character. Claire is looking for the light. She really is looking for the light. Which is why she's constantly trying to distance herself from the darkness of the past, the darkness of the reality of the past, all of it. She really is actively looking for the light. And, I definitely want to honor that in the pairing. So I chose, like I said, the Alsatian. It is a Riesling from the Trepet, Domaine Trepet out of Alsace, France. It is...
Say the name one more time.
Trepet. Did you see it there? Oh, that's right. We're doing audio.
No. The light keeps blowing it out. So it's like say it really slow.
I always forget that we're doing the audio sometimes.
I know. Well, and a lot of the times I can't, like later when I come to look at the video, I can't read the label. So I'm like, no, I need you to say it really clearly so I can go look
hilarious.
it up. Trepet. Okay, Trepet.
Trepet. Domaine Trepet. It is their BBHM. It is, like I said, a Riesling. It is a biodynamic Riesling. You get the petrol is that petrolatum thing is very intense, and I chose that for a reason because generally that's not something I enjoy, but because of this particular pairing, that kind of mineral nose to this world because I can just sense it. Being in this place, I know it smells of wet earth. It smells of sadness and depression and all the things that I'm not a real fan of being around. So I wanted to find a wine that did two things, that grounded you in that boggishness, for lack of a better term, that sadness, that bitterness, that earthy thing, and also kind of teased you with the light. And we get that in the kind of honeysuckle that comes through, in the lemon, in the citrus. It's a lovely little Riesling. I will say that.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. And I always say in my head, I have no idea which is the correct way, but I always say Alsace rather than Alsace. So however you listeners say it, now, go look for either Alsace or Alsace. ALSACE, right, is how you pronounce the region or how you spell the region.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So that is what we're talking about.
Actually, yeah, you're right. It is
Alsace or Alsace.
You're right. It's Alsace.
It is Alsace. Okay.
Alsace,
okay. I always just assume I'm pronouncing shit wrong because I usually am.
Because I keep thinking of Alsatian, and that's my I always truncate.
Right. Because it's not Alsatian,
right.
So it's Alsace, but Alsatian. Because again, nothing. Yeah. It's language. It's like it's never going to be simple. You got to be a native to know what the fuck you're doing. I feel like we almost do that just to be dicks when we're like the native speakers. And so it's like no one else can figure it out, and they're sort of like, oh, we know it's your second language or third or fourth, or you barely speak it at all. You're a tourist.
Right.
Anywho, absolutely. So once again, everybody. Chris Cronin's The Moor.
Yeah.
It is out now in the UK. It should be out in the States by the time you're hearing this, but if not, keep a lookout for sometime likely in July, if it's not out already. and that is his feature film debut. Really great character-driven horror film that inspired by true events, but not based on them. Just very, very loosely inspired by. But all about the moor and all shot on an actual moor with the actual weather of the moor. So that is something to see at the if nothing else, even if you're not that into horror. Like, it's a slow burner too, so you don't have to deal with too much horror during this one. But it's a very effective horror. Very effective. I can't wait to see what else he's going to do after this one. But go check it out. And once again, this has been Wine and. I am Dave. With me has been Dallas. And it has been my birthday. So sing happy birthday to me too as you listen to this. A belated happy birthday. Do it all in a circle. Record yourself. Send it to me as a text message. Yeah. Do like a voice message kind of a thing. Send that, upload it to your Google Drive, send it to Wine and
Okay, you're asking a lot for people to upload to Google Drive. That's a lot.
Sing me happy birthday, motherfuckers. Sing me happy birthday.
Google Drive.
All right. and for everyone in the States, it'll also be belated, but happy Independence Day, because that is tomorrow as we are recording this. Happy Independence Day. It'll be a little belated for our Canadian listeners, but happy Canada Day, which was July 1st. So this is just a big time for North America. What can I say? My birthday, Independence Day, and Canada Day.
Yeah, the big three is for no.
It's the trinity of important things that happened this week. All right, folks, this has been Wine and. We will be back next week with another wine and entertainment pairing for your entertainment. Ciao for now.
Ciao, guys.
And by the way, you're going to hear this week's episode drop. I took your new sound. You're the only person talking in the opening now because you recorded it as though you were the only person talking when you did your spiel. Yeah, you're like, he's Dave, I'm Dallas, la, 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 la. And I was like, oh, okay. But you know what? You have such a sultry, smooth jazz voice going on with it. The only thing you might do another take on in the future, I think it sounds really good compared to the last one, but you talk so softly into this microphone that you actually drop at the end of every phrase. That last word drops so low, it virtually... your brain kind of finishes the sentence because you know where the sentence is going. Yeah. But I swear you talk so softly, you just swallow that last word every single time. Yeah. So it's like, he's Dave, I'm Dallas, and together we do the... and it just goes so down that I'm just like, oh, wow, yeah, that word is not audible at all.
That sounds like me.
But aside from that, because you have such a soft, smooth voice when you're talking into that mic, but listen to it this week when the episode drops. It'll be the benighted episode, and we'll have that as the new opening. Okay. All right. That was my get my game face on spiel.